Hi. So as Ellie said, I'm going to talk a little bit about React and Ember. I'm actually not going to tell you about how to use React with Ember or something. I'm not even sure if that's a thing. I'm going to talk about personal experience mostly. Yeah. So this story. Sorry. I'm Claudia. I am a web developer. I am mostly front-end, but also a bit of full stack because I guess as front-end developers nowadays, we all end up doing a bit of full stack because of Node. I am currently working with YLD, which is a Node consultancy, and I also mentor at Code Your Future, which is a coding school for refugees. So if you're interested, Google them both. They're pretty cool. So this story actually starts with, not with Ember, not with React, but with Angular. A few years ago, before I knew about React, I was working in an Angular application. And it was a fairly new application, so we needed to hire a few developers into our team. So we were interviewing a lot at the time. And one of the developers was really good in the technical questions, and he was amazing. We wanted to hire him. This happened, I guess, this is something that can happen in interviews at any time, but we asked, why do you want to be a front-end developer? And it just replied, oh, because I really love React. So I was a bit confused. Okay, this is an Angular job. And you're telling me that you want to do React. Are you talking about Angular? But he just said, no, I really would love to do React. And I'm like, okay, but would you be okay with working with Angular? And he's like, no, I'm not really sure about this. And I'm like, okay, fine. So at that point, I was just thinking, okay, why is he here? Fine. But then I started wondering, okay, I heard other people speaking about it, and it was picking up a lot of traction. This was about 2-3 years ago. So I wanted to see what React was. So my next role was with React, because I wanted to learn about it. So I wanted to know why people loved React so much. And I started investigating, I started reading, and once I started this new project with React, it wasn't easy. It's never easy to start learning a new framework. And I mean, coming from Angular was quite structured. It gave you a lot of things out of the box, like routing and testing. And React didn't, so you need to research. And then there was Webpack, of all things, right? So you needed to learn to work with Webpack. There was no build tool just ready for you to jump on. But as time went by, I just started enjoying it a little bit more. And I started really getting used to the way React works and to the patterns that the community follows. And it became really easy. It became really nice to work with because my team had a tool that had an application that they had built and that they loved because it was tailored for us and we were not hacking around. So yeah, it was really cool. And these were the things that I liked the most, I guess. And you can write React in several ways, but this was the way that I just got used to program in. I guess functional programming, writing really explicit code, being able to trace the flow of your application from the beginning to the end. So if you look at some part of your application, you can see where it came from, and you can know what code triggered each part of the application. And you know what code triggered the function that you're currently looking at. And yeah, you import only what you need, not a giant framework. So after 2 years of this, of learning React, of getting used to React, of getting used to React's patterns, getting used to composing, instead of extending, blah, 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 I was proposed to work on an Ember project. And I said, okay, an Ember project, okay. So first, how many of you have worked with Ember in here? No one. Great. So, amazing. And React, as someone who has worked with React, I guess, yeah, of course. You're in a React meetup. So I was like, okay, why not? Let's give it a try. It's time to learn something new. It's been 2 years. There's lots of companies working with Ember. So yeah, I guess, yeah, let's give it a try. And in the beginning, it was fairly, it looked quite nice. I started looking at the tools that Ember had. And Ember has this tool that is quite similar to create React app in the beginning. It's called Ember CLI. And you can just create a new app just by typing Ember new name of your app. But the difference between this and create React app is that it already provides you a structure with all the folders that you're supposed to put your code in. So Ember is kind of MVC. So there will be a folder for controllers, models, routes, components, helpers, and all of that. Because the idea behind Ember is that it tells you exactly how to write your codes. There's lots of documentation telling you how to write your code. So there's not much choice involved. That's the philosophy behind it, as opposite to React, I guess. Yeah, and the architecture is fairly sensible because the community works together to get the perfect architecture instead of everyone working separately to get their own architecture, which, yeah, I guess it depends on the opinion of the developer, but it works well for some teams. Yeah, and it handles testing out of the box. You just drop a file into any part of the app, end it with -test, and it runs your tests. But that looked really nice until my first feature and until the code review time came in. Lots of comments. Most of the comments just said, please do this the Ember way. Okay, fine. So what's the Ember way? You extend instead of compose. So basically most of it just works by extending. Well, I guess with React, I was used to higher order components. You can also extend with React, but Ember really relies on these a lot. And I was like, okay, these will become really difficult to debug, and how many layers can you have? And I don't know, I was so used to do it the other way that it was just confusing me. But I guess in the end, if you have sensible code, it can work pretty well. Both approaches can work really well, as long as you don't just have several layers of extension, so that's all right. Then the next one, everything is a string. This is not immutable JS. This is how you get properties inside your classes. You don't do this.items. You have to do this.getItems, this.setItems, for example. Doesn't feel a lot like JavaScript. It's a little bit difficult to autocomplete. But yeah, it's fine. You can get used to it. So next thing, if you want to run tests, you need to filter them. If you want to filter only a certain tests in your application, if you want to run only certain tests, you need to filter it with strings. So this is, if you look at the first example, it says a module for acceptance, and then there's a string. That is how you describe your tests. And that's, yeah, that's how you know which test you are running. So Ember contains acceptance tests, unit tests, and integration tests. It allows you to run the 3 of them out of the box without any setup. So you just write as a string, basically, what type of test you have. There's a few other differences, but yeah, this is one of them. But yeah, then when you want to run them, you run Ember test filter, name of your module. Now, what if I wanted to run all the shopping cart tests that are only unit tests? I would need to do a negative filter. And what if there was a test called a test for a module, and what if there was a module called acceptance? Then how do you run unit tests for a module called acceptance? It will run all the acceptance tests. It just doesn't work. But again, if you keep a really strict naming convention for your modules, it can work, because Ember has other advantages, so it's all right. There's like a trade-off. But the next thing, this was the most interesting one. Ember contains add-ons. Add-ons are packages that you can build, and you can install them via NPM. And once you install them in your app, they are immediately available for use. So, for example, you can install an add-on that contains a few components, and you install it just by installing. The components are immediately available in your app, and you can start using them. I guess that is good for UI libraries, for example. But I guess the question here is that you're not telling your app explicitly, use this package. You're just installing it via NPM. So I have this application here. This is a sample Ember application. It's just a Hello World application. Just bootstrapped it with Ember CLI. And I'm just going to install a package that will make your app be more Christmassy. So let's just run it. Well, damn. Okay, it's called Merry Ember. If you want to install anything, if you have an Ember app and you want to hijack it, do it. Okay, good, it worked. Okay, the app is running again, and we're coming back. I didn't do anything. Yeah. Yeah, there's snowflakes falling. Enjoy a little bit, and we'll go back to the code. Yeah, so you can see it just didn't do anything. So, for example, if you have a package that has like a minor version upgraded, and they decide to, and for some reason someone decides to make fun of everyone using their package, they can just do something like this. How does this work? It's just simply by, this is the index.js of my add-on. And I'm just exporting a property called content4. And I'm telling it to add a style tag to the head, and I'm telling it to add some HTML with snowflakes to the body. And that's basically it. Which is scary, right? It's a bit scary. It's scary. So this was how I was feeling when I discovered what add-ons could do. And whenever I went to speak to one of my friends and they asked me hey, how are you doing? I would just tell them, I'm doing Ember now. And, and then be like, yeah, poor you. Well, but yeah, as time goes by, I start seeing that it wasn't all that bad. Ember actually had several good things. I mean, there's so many people using it, so certainly it helps teams to create their apps, and people really love it. So yeah. And there are some things that we can actually learn from Ember and move it into our React applications. Because usually React applications can be very loose. Each team will build the application according to what they need. So something that Ember brings that's really good is conventions. There is lots of documentation. There is lots of people helping you online, telling you how you should do certain things. Okay, it's not necessarily good, but it helps, I guess, if you're searching for solutions. And people will just give you one solution instead of giving you several. So it's good, I guess, if you're a junior developer, for example, and you're just starting out. Or if you have a team that that has mostly junior developers, for example, it can help. The architecture is pretty solid. because there's so many people iterating over the same architecture all the time. And it comes with something interesting that I think could be helpful in a React app if you already know how you want to structure your components and your pages. It has this generator thing. You just type Ember generate route Christmas, for example, and it will create a folder with your pages, with all the CSS and JavaScript files that you need. For example, can be helpful. But yeah, basically, conventions. I feel like when working with React apps that don't use any framework, like Next.js or whatever, if it's just a React app that you built from scratch, you chose to use Redux, you chose to use a GraphQL, whatever. Each developer will have their own opinion on how to do things. And it's a good idea, I guess, when starting a project or as the project evolves, to decide together what you want to do and to document that and to make sure that that everyone then follows those conventions. I mean, the conventions can evolve. You can change the documentation, you can update it. But if everyone does it the same way, then code reviews are just so much less painful. In the case of Ember, for example, code reviews just became way less painful because you're supposed to do it always the same way, so people are not code reviewing on little details. They're code reviewing on the actual implementation. And yeah, this is what I was saying. Finding solutions for problems is a little bit easier because everyone does it the same way. But I guess there's a trade-off. So yeah, I realized I was complaining so much about Ember. I was being a little I was being a little bit of an idiot, I guess, because you know. Each developer has their own way of doing things, and when you get so accustomed to doing things own way, particularly you get so accustomed to functional programming, to hire other components, to choosing your own tools, to have freedom in your development, coming into an environment where everything is way much stricter, it just makes you, at least to me, it made me feel like I was being constrained, and instead of seeing the good things, I just started by seeing the bad things about it, and I only started seeing the good things afterwards. Yeah, that kind of happens with everyone, right? I think everyone has, lots of people have been here, and lots of people have heard the story of the jQuery developer who came to a framework or whatever and just kept on complaining that they couldn't use jQuery modules, for example. I mean, I've done that. I've heard lots of people who've done that, but that just means that, yeah, we are used to a certain way, but we can always learn to do something differently. And we can learn from frameworks. I think it's always, yeah, but I think it's always a good idea to look at other frameworks and see how they work. So moving from like one framework to the other is like, I guess, learning to drive on the other side of the road. You're just like, oh, what's happening? What am I doing here? But after a while, your mind just gets used to it and is just driving on the other side of the road as if you were, as you've learned. Yeah, what I meant is just code. I guess code is a cultural thing. It's like a language, like a skill. And yeah, you never stop learning. Just yeah, keep your mind open to new things. You don't need to keep your mind open to Ember. I still don't like it, but yeah. But lots of people like it, so it's fair enough. And it's good, it has good things. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Don't know if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
Have you picked up React projects after working with Ember?
No, not yet, actually.
Yeah, I guess, or maybe do you foresee ways in which the experience with Ember will influence how you approach React or set?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it will definitely influence in the part of deciding standards from an early stage of the application. and writing more documentation, I guess, because I think most of the problems that I found with React apps were not the actual tooling. It was just people having trouble following the standards because you need to write code really quickly. So you just write it your own way, and then you don't define a convention because you need to ship it, and then you forget to. Then there's no documentation at all. So the next person will go and will just write it their own way because it's difficult, right? So if you can. I believe that next time I work in a React app, I will try to spend more time in the beginning just setting a bit of standards, not too much, but yeah, just a little bit so everyone can find it easier to work with the app. Yeah.
Hey, now that you have experience working with Angular and with React and with Ember, do you think there is a case or the particular domain or particular kind of scenario where React isn't the right choice, where one of these two other frameworks will be just de facto better?
Yeah, I guess. I guess I would probably always go for React, but I think that if you have a team that is used, would be on one of the cases, I guess. If you have a team that's used to Ember, right, everyone knows Ember.
If a team isn't used to anything, if you just want to pick up and start somewhere, would you recommend either Ember or Angular to somebody?
Yeah, I guess if it's, because React is kind of, I don't know, you need to know a lot about JavaScript, I think, and the other frameworks, both Angular and Ember, maybe you don't need to know as much, particularly Ember, because you have so much documentation, you can just read through the old docs and you know how to write your app. So if you have a team that's less experienced and you need to create an app fairly quickly, I guess in that situation I'd use it. I suppose also for really big apps, maybe it can be a good choice. React can get messy, but again, yeah, it's about choosing the right tool for the job, but it's also about choosing the tool that your team likes better. So I guess if you have a team that evaluates a set of choices and they prefer to use one of those, that can also be another reason to go for